Okay, last year I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to try and read a lot more books. And at the time, I'd realised that the library had quite a lot of books on offer. So I thought it'd be a good chance to broaden my horizons when it comes to authors, stories and genres and stuff. And I did a overview of ones I read last year. And this year I'm pretty much sticking to the same thing. And I get through I get through books faster these days because of my job, because I get 2 breaks and a lunch half hour to read through books. And I figured instead of waiting till the end of the year to review the books I've read, considering the fact that I'll forget, I thought I'd do it after I've read a book, and then at the end I can put all the vids together and have a nice review. So, to start with, this year I have read, at the beginning of the year I read Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul by Douglas Adams, who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy, which is why my brother bought me this, because he knew that I was a Hitchhiker's fan. Because he got me this for Christmas like years and years ago, and I read it, and then I've just finished, well, earlier this year I reread it. Because I remember not really paying much attention to it because I was reading it at school, and it's a bit hard to focus on books when you're reading them when other people are around. And it's basically about a guy called Dirk Gently, this is actually the second of the Dirk Gently books, and he's a detective who deals with cases in an holistic way. So he looks at everything and things that may not necessarily be related, but they are in some way. And he's dealing with the case of basically one case which actually links to another case that's going on, or another story that's going on about the god, involving the god Thor and Odin, the Norse gods, which is quite interesting. It's a good book if you like detective, non-serious detective stories, along with fantasy and mythology. So, and the next book I read after that was The Life and Times of Thunderbolt Kid by Bill Bryson, which is a book I got for Christmas from my dad. I have never actually read any Bill Bryson before, which I was a bit surprised why my dad bought it, but I suppose he thought I might like it, because I do like funny or humorous kind of stuff, and he's apparently quite a funny writer. He usually actually does travel books, and this is actually a journey into his past, mostly talking about growing up, his childhood in Des Moines, Iowa. So it was quite interesting to see, because he described mostly the 50s, what the 50s was like for children growing up in that time, and also what else was going on in the world at that time, which is interesting for me because of course I wasn't alive then, so it's quite interesting to see what that was like. Plus that's the era my parents grew up in, although that is America and this is England, so that's a little bit hard to relate to in any way. But I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. He's a very good writer, very understandable. And the next book I went on to after that was actually a book I don't have. It's one I borrowed from a lady at work. Well, she lent it to me because she thought I might like it, because it's a Star Trek book basically, called Pawns and Symbols. It's basically a story that sort of continues on from the Trouble with Tribbles one, which is little furry things, but it's a lot more serious. And you don't have to have read Trouble with Tribbles really to understand it, but it's basically about this scientist who gets taken from a planet by the Klingons, saved by the Klingons actually, and then pretty much kidnapped and forced or whatever, to help them with this famine that's going on their home worlds. And of course Kirk has to get her back. Although most of the story is actually set from her point of view, from her experiences dealing with the Klingons, which I think was very interesting perspective, because it's usually set on the ship or with those characters that you recognise, and to have a sort of new character that you don't know interacting with a main alien species is, wow, it's weird, and I actually enjoyed it despite not getting to see the Enterprise much. But then I'm not really a big, to be fair, I'm not a big fan of stories about Kirk, so I don't actually care, you know. I'm much more into stories focused around the other characters, because I think the other characters are interesting to explore, and I've read a fair few stories that do explore the other characters. And this one I did enjoy. I did get kind of frustrated at times, thinking, gosh, you know, where's this going? Is it what's actually happening here? But overall, I'd say it was a good story. After that, I read the Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde, which is Jasper Fforde. I've read a couple of his books, his nursery crime books about Jack Sprat, who deals with crimes relating to nursery rhyme characters, and they all exist in this world, and I think it was so funny and so good that I had to check out his Tuesday Next stories. And Tuesday Next is actually the name of the main female character, and it's very odd. It's very odd. It's not actually as funny as the other ones, but it's set in an alternative 1985 in England, where there's a war going on in another country, and they've actually got departments in the police department that specialise in crimes relating to books and literature and stuff like that. And they got manuscripts, famous manuscripts are like guarded really, really heavily, and one of them's one of them's stolen, and it's basically a detective thing, her trying to find out, but it's not really her finding out who did it, because she knows who did it, but everybody believes that guy's dead, so it's basically her looking for the guy and trying to find out what he's up to, and it involves Jane Eyre actually. And going into the novel, they find this device so you can actually go into novels and take people out. It's very clever, and it was good to read. I actually preferred his nursery crime stuff though, to be fair, but I still did enjoy that one. I think it was an interesting character, a well-rounded character, very interesting world. I'd love to see more of it. There are actually more stories with that character, and so I might have to check out some of those. Alright, after that I read Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson, because I thought I liked his other one, and I saw this one and I thought, wow, science, cool. And it is science, basically, which is, it's funny because I am interested in various areas of science, mostly biological, and that was mostly near the end of it. And, you know, reading science books can be quite heavy and quite, you know, you have to be a scientist to understand some of them. But that is basically science made easier to understand for people who aren't quite so technical. And I did find it very interesting. I did enjoy some of it. It scared the hell out of me, some of it did. The whole idea that it's amazing the human race is even still alive because of all these things that could make us extinct tomorrow. So that kind of scared me. But overall, yeah, I thought some of the things I understand better after reading it, and I like that he laid it out pretty well with working from all the biological stuff was sort of at the end. You had space to start with, and how the universe came together and stuff. There's still some of it I didn't understand, and then he does obviously list various names of things then you're never going to remember because, but still I think I would have enjoyed, I think I do understand science through reading that better than if I had read some textbook or whatever. So that's the books I've read this year. Not many, 5. And I've almost finished a book at the moment called East of Ealing by Robert Rankin, which is another of his Brentford stories, the third in a trilogy, although he's done a Douglas Adams thing, and he also has a 4th one in the trilogy. I don't even know why they bother calling it a trilogy. I mean, I don't even know if he got that from Douglas Adams or Douglas Adams got that from him, because this book was from the 80s, so who knows. But yeah, I'll have a better review of that once I've actually finished it. It probably won't be very long because I'm eager to finish it. So that's the books I've read this year, and I'll let you know about the rest of them I read this year. I have no idea what I'm going on to next, so that'll be a surprise for both you and me.